Rebecca, how's the quorum count looking?
We're 5 away.
Okay.
Good to go.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start. So this, welcome everybody to the March full board meeting of Community Board 8. And we will get started first with updates from the 19th precinct, if they're here.
We have Officer Lombardi.
Detective Lombardi's here. Yes, great. Go ahead.
How are you? Good evening. Thank you for guys for having us and inviting us to your meeting for a quick brief. Just want to start off. We are seeing a little bit of increase in larcenies from an increase in larcenies from stores. A lot of our targets, the two targets we have on 86th Street and on 3rd Avenue and Sephora, we've seen a bit of increase there. We just made a great arrest for a recidivist who was hitting us there and also wanted in transit for some transit robberies. That was just this Monday. We made an excellent arrest by our 86th Street foot post. Inspector Eager has assigned 2 officers to 86th Street, along with some of our other corridors where we're seeing an increase in crime at those stores for larceny. Robberies are up slightly as well, but that's mostly in part due to the shoplifting gone wrong. If there's a threat of violence, if someone displays a weapon, or if the security guard approaches the person who's stealing and they are shoved, now that becomes a robbery. Thankfully, we're not seeing violence in the streets that are increasing our robberies, so that is a positive. But we've also, once again, had some great arrests in the past few months that have closed out quite a bit of these patterns for our recidivists who are hitting a lot of these chain stores. Dwayne Reed's, like I said, the Targets, Victoria's Secret, Sephora, and a couple on Madison Avenue. Also, we've seen a increase of grand larcenies of autos, quite a few bit, and they've been from cars that are being left unattended while running. If someone runs into a convenience store, they're leaving their vehicle unlocked and running with the keys in outside of these locations, certain locations, and they've been stolen. We recovered quite a few, made a few good arrests, but it is a bit of a problem. We do deploy accordingly to some of those locations where we've seen that. Also, we are seeing a little bit of an increase in the theft of the catalytic converters from the Honda Civics and Acuras. We didn't see that at first. This kind of half started a few months back in other precincts throughout the city. We were monitoring it. Now we're starting to see it here in the 19th. If you guys do see people in the early hours underneath cars, seems like someone's doing work under a car at 6, 7, 5 a.m. in the morning, please call 911. More than likely, they're stealing someone's catalytic converter off that car. Most people don't usually do work on their car that early in the morning. That's a bit of an issue we're seeing now. Grand larcenies, that is one of our major driving numbers here in the precinct. We are seeing a little bit of an increase in that. That is also from some of the shoplifting, and we are still seeing a lot of the phone scams, the false promises, the the scams of where police officers calling you, your son or grandson's been arrested, please give us money, IRS. We're still seeing a lot of those. So that is still a bit of a big problem. People are still falling for it. Any question about a phone call you're receiving that you owe money or some relatives locked up, please call the precinct, come into the precinct, do not give anybody money. It still is a problem. We're still seeing that. It is still driving our numbers for our grand larcenies. Also, we moved our community council meetings to now Tuesdays. They used to be the first Monday of the month. Inspector Eager and Nick moved it to Tuesdays because it's just better to have some of our personnel, our public safety teams, our special operation lieutenant, he's around, so he joins the meetings, and so is a lot of our NCOs to be on the meetings and have interaction with the public. And we're looking forward to hopefully having a hybrid meeting for the next one. We're just waiting another week, and we'll let everybody know it'll be in person if you choose, also online here at the precinct. So that's Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, the first Tuesday of the month instead of Mondays. Also, be a lookout also for our Build the Block meetings. So most of you guys know already, our precinct's broken into 4 sectors. It's A, B, C, and D. There's 2 NCO officers and neighborhood coordination officers in those sectors, and they do host quarterly meetings. It's a meeting directly with them. You can address any issue, if quality of life, crime questions, directly with them. Check our Twitter page, or you can call us at the precinct. I'll give a number in a second, and you can call their office as well for those dates. They do change. We just had a few, so those will be coming up soon. Also, if you guys are good with computers, our Twitter program from here at the precinct, Officer Nuccio does it. He's also our crime prevention officer. He does a fantastic job with Twitter. Follow us on there. He posts a lot of excellent things that are going like real time, street closures, a lot of wanted flyers and photos of people we're looking for here in the precinct. It's just a really great source of information. Also, there's a big recruitment push for the police department for hiring. If anyone is looking to join the police department who is the age of 21 to 35, I believe it is. It's 212 recruit, and also online. You can find the link for that information there. But just a quick little summary. I know I'm a little bit of time crunched here, so we're glad to be here. Any questions, you can reach us at 212-452-0613. I'm Detective Lombardi. Officer Brian Locker is my partner here in the precinct. That's our number. If you need to reach your NCOs for each sector, all this is published online as well on the nyc.gov/NYPD. All our phone numbers are listed on that website as well under the 19th precinct. The NCO office is 212-452-0602. And you can reach anyone on there. You can leave a message for them, and we will all get back to you as well.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you for having us.
All right. So we have been joined by some of our elected officials, but before we go to them, I just want to remind everybody that for the public session, you need to sign up before 6:45. So if you are interested in speaking in the public session, make sure you go online to where you joined on Zoom here and sign up in order to do that. So with that, I believe we have been joined by the District Attorney for New York County, Alvin Bragg. And so I will turn it over to him.
Thanks so
And
much.
welcome.
Thank you so much. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks so much. And thank you to all of you. I'm so happy to be with the community boards that have been virtually going around the island. My name's Alvin Bragg. I'm the Manhattan District Attorney. I'm your neighbor a bit to the north, lifelong Manhattanite. Grew up in Harlem, which is where I live now with my family. Career prosecutor. I've worked as a state prosecutor at the Attorney General's office, then as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, where I did the sort of full spectrum from assaults to armed robbery to public corruption to financial fraud. And then back to the Attorney General's office, where I had a number of positions, including ending up as the chief deputy overseeing the whole office of more than 1,500. And I see a number of my colleagues on Zoom screens being what they are. I probably don't see all of them, but I see Estelle Stryker-Santiago, who leads our community partnerships, and a number of other folks may be on as well. And just briefly wanted to kind of touch upon our priorities Island-wide, our number one priority is gun violence. We've seen an uptick starting around last August in gun incidents. So we have been prioritizing that. Earlier this year, I've appointed our first ever sort of executive level position focused on guns, someone who's coordinating all of our gun work. We've done probably more gun possession cases to date this year, sadly, as we're keeping up with the nature of what's going on. And that person's role is really to look at each of those cases and coordinate all of our intelligence and to make sure that we're looking not just at each case, but connecting the dots, connecting our intelligence, and looking not just at one case one by one, but hopefully taking cases that are about one guns, looking at them as trafficking cases potentially, and getting more of the guns off the street, and also looking at ghost guns, and in particular looking and focusing on making sure we're prioritizing getting guns away from and out of the hands of anyone that's got a domestic violence history. So that's our island-wide number one priority. We're also, and you'll see a theme here, these are things that have sort of spiked up during COVID, are prioritizing hate crimes. We have two executive level positions focused on hate crimes. We are, again, these are unfortunate numbers, but we are, since the creation of the unit several years ago, have more hate crimes now active than any other time in the unit's history, doing a number of outreach efforts to make ourselves available and make clear that we are taking these cases seriously, in particular reaching out to the AAPI community and to houses of worship, and as we're focusing also on anti-Semitic hate crime, which also we've seen an increase in. So those are areas that we are kind of responding to the unfortunate needs, but hoping that our activity in this area will have deterrent effects so that we can get our arms around it as we go forward. The last area I would mention is retail theft, which again is something we've seen an increase in. I formed a small business alliance as we're seeing a lot of theft from a number of businesses, and we've been in touch with our larger businesses as well, but also wanted to make sure that our small businesses were included in the discussion. So we've been partnering with the NYPD and businesses and some of the business improvement districts on that. And really, all that we're doing is very data driven. There's sort of an interesting, similar approach to guns, where in guns, so much of the gun violence is driven by a relatively small portion of folks. Digging into the retail theft data with NYPD, we see that kind of 18% of those arrested account for 42% of the arrests. And so it's a kind of similar phenomenon when we look at the data, that a relatively small group of people are driving the retail theft. And so we are prioritizing those who are recidivists and focusing on them. A large number of the group, as we dig into them, are folks who are in need of various types of services, from mental health to substance use disorder. So we're looking to prioritize that, but also a number of them are opportunists who are kind of taking advantage of the moment. And for those, we'll be using our kind of traditional prosecutorial resources. So those are some of our priorities. I'm really grateful for the work you're doing at the community board, and happy to be in dialogue with you, and look forward to partnering together to make Manhattan safer in the coming months, certainly, and then in the years to come as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. I know that either you or your office will be coming to an upcoming Health, Seniors, Social Services Committee later in the month, so we'll have time for questions then, but we really appreciate your being here in that report.
Thank you.
So next, we will turn it over to the Borough President, Mark Levine, who is here. So Borough President Levine, take it away. And welcome.
There we go, the unmute button. It's great to see you, Mr. Chair. It's also great to see my friend, DA Alvin Bragg. Great to get the update. Hello, CB8. It's wonderful to see all of you. I know that, like me, you've just been torn up by what's happening in Ukraine, just the horrible humanitarian crisis in a absolutely vile, unjustified war. And you've probably heard me say that New York City has a role to play in this crisis. First, because we're home to one of the largest Ukrainian communities in America. Second, because for a long time, this has been really one of the favored safe harbors of some of the oligarchs very close to Putin. where they have had a particular interest in using ultra high-end real estate to shield ill-gotten assets. And I think it's time that we put a stop to that. And it's why I've called for the federal government to impose sanctions on those members of Putin's inner circle who do own this ultra high-end property here in Manhattan. That would allow for those assets to be frozen, be seized essentially. We're still anxiously awaiting action by the U.S. Treasury Department, but I've certainly been speaking up loudly on behalf of this policy. And I've also been working to embrace both the Ukrainian communities in New York City and the Russian communities of New York City, which after all are our neighbors and should not be confused with the Putin regime. There's been a terrible series of incidents targeting Russian restaurants that really are unfair and unjustified, and I would even argue un-American. So I've been really trying to embrace our Russian neighbors as well, many of whom are suffering now, as so many of us are. On matters closer to home, this has been a big couple of weeks on COVID news, with so many of the protections being lifted, so many of the masking requirements, the screening requirement for vaccination in public establishments like restaurants. It's really thrilling to see how much progress we've made against Omicron, how all the numbers have moved so far in the right direction since those horrible days of early January. Experts I talk to think that there's very likely to be another wave, hopefully not as bad as what we've been through. And there's some signs that we're plateauing now in Manhattan, and we see our sister city, London, has an increase of cases. No cause for alarm, but a reminder that we still have work to do here. After all, only a third of people in New York City have had their booster shots. That's our best protection. Only less than half of kids between age 5 and 11 have even had their primary series of shots. So we do have to continue to push vaccination and other measures, and you'll hear me talk about that. But you as leaders in the community, I hope you can balance our elation with the progress that we're making with keeping an eye on the work that we still have to do ahead on this front. I've been working on one measure to make our subway system safer in the wake of this horrible series of violent incidents. And that is for the city to catch up with other parts of the world that have installed screen doors on their subway platforms as a way to protect against people being pushed or falling or trespassing or attempting suicide or even dropping their cell phone in there. And this is a remarkably successful technology. It's in place at JFK Airport on the air train. You might have seen it, and most other major capitals around the world. I partnered with your wonderful local council member here, Julie Menon, on that front. And I think you also overlap with Keith Powers. He's also been part of our push. And we have scored a success of sorts. We've got the MTA has agreed to 3 pilots. They're going to install screen doors in Times Square on the 7th train platform, on the 3rd Avenue stop of the L train, and another station in Queens. But I want to keep pushing. And there's actually a number of stations in CB8 where the MTA's own analysis has determined that they're feasible for installation of screen doors. I just want to quickly tell you what they are. They are 82nd and 72nd Street on the Q, as well as Roosevelt Island on the F. So even by the MTA's very conservative measures, those are 3 stations in CB8 where this technology is already feasible. So we're going to keep pushing. Maybe CB8 wants to keep pushing. We really do want to go much farther than just 2 stations in Manhattan in this pilot phase. I've been working on the issue of trees. We've called for planting of 1 million more trees in New York City as a climate change measure because they absorb CO2, as a resiliency measure because they absorb runoff and cool neighborhoods. We're getting lots of traction. I've had great discussions with the administration. I would love your input here on CB8 and where you would like to see trees go. Whether they're empty tree pits, places that need new tree pits, NYCHA campuses, rooftops, be creative. We would love your input. I think this policy is gaining momentum. I'm optimistic it's going to happen. And we want CB8 to be a full partner in that process. I fear I've gone over time. So finally, I'll just mention that we have extended the application period for community board applications through to March 15th. So if you are up for reapplying, do it, please. You have till March 15th. And if you know other great leaders, please encourage them to do so as well. We're really excited about the number of applications we've gotten so far, but we want to close strong and would love your help in getting the word out. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, CB8. Looking forward to doing work with you on these and many other great issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for that reminder about the community board application. So everybody make sure you get your applications in. And from there, we will go to one of our council members. Councilmember Julie Menon has joined us. Welcome.
Sorry, there's always a delay to unmute. So hello, CB8. It's great to see everyone. Hello, Mr. Borough President. Great to see you,
Julie.
And thank you, Chair Russell Squire. It's great to be with all of you. So I have a lot to report. I'll try to be brief, though. Since I was on last time, I want to let you know that I've been named chair of the Small Business Committee. I'm really excited about this. Some of you might not know, but I'm a former small business owner. Before 9/11, I owned a restaurant and catering company located in Lower Manhattan, and my business was completely devastated on 9/11. I started a not-for-profit that was focused on rebuilding small businesses. So it's deeply personal to be able now to chair the Small Business Committee. I held my first hearing. I want to thank the chair as well as Alita Camp, both of whom testified, and many others on this Zoom. We've got a lot of work to do to support our city's small businesses, and rest assured I am on that case. A couple different things I also want to report on is that first of all, I announced, and I hope you all saw it, that I was able to secure a new composting site for the district. This is huge and so important because the administration has cut composting budget by $18 million. So it's more important than ever. So just want to read the details to make sure you know about it. It's at Asphalt Green. And basically the site will be open Sundays from 7:30 to 12:30. So I hope that you will all come out this Sunday and utilize it. It is great news for our community. Another thing that I've been working on is street safety. It is unacceptable the number of deaths and injuries that we've seen from vehicular traffic. So we've got to do something about it. I brought Commissioner Ydanis Rodriguez to our district. I walked him through a lot of intersections, particularly on First Avenue, and I presented him with a list of 44 intersections in Council District 5 that I believe need to be completely redesigned with traffic calming measures. So I am working hard on that. I also introduced my first bill in the council the other week, which is on COVID pop-up sites. Some of you have seen them. They've proliferated. They're like whack-a-moles. They're all over the city, and they're promising that they'll give you results next day or in 2 days. And oftentimes people aren't getting any results. They get them 2 weeks later. They're infecting loved ones. It's unacceptable. We're cracking down on it. So my bill requires 311 to actually track this data, to publish this data, because before, if you called 311 to complain, you actually couldn't complain about this. So I'm excited about that. I'll be introducing another bill tomorrow, but I'll come back to talk about that at the next meeting. There's also been, and we're getting a lot of complaints about construction noise, particularly on a site on East 90th between First and York. We've contacted DEP numerous times. They've sent out inspectors 5 different times. Most recently on Monday, they sent out an inspector and issued a summons. So I am on it, and we will continue to work very aggressively to remedy this situation, because no one should have to tolerate this unacceptable noise. 2 other quick items I want to mention. I've been working on 15-minute delivery apps. You might have seen them: GoPuff, Gorillas, There are tons of them all over our district and throughout the city. They're advertising 15-minute delivery. That, in my humble opinion, as a lawyer, is an absolutely illegal claim. It violates the city's consumer protection law. So I've sent them a cease and desist letter. I'm also partnering with one of my colleagues, Chris Marte, on a legislative package of bills to crack down on this industry because it is endangering pedestrians and it's endangering the workers themselves. So we are going to be addressing that. And then lastly, I just wanted to make sure that all of you know that I have my inauguration on Sunday, March 27th at the 92nd Street Y at 12 o'clock. Everyone is invited. I hope I'll see all of you there. It's been a long time since we've been able to come out together as a community in person. So I'd really love to see all of you there. So that is my report. And Cameron, who is on here, my Director of Constituent Services, will remain on and happy to provide any additional information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. So we will now, I think, proceed with the public session. And so before we get that underway, I am going to turn it over to Will Brightbill to go over the rules and the processes and all of that for folks who are going to be speaking in the public session.
So if you have signed up for the public session, Russell will call your name, and you can help us find you and move quickly by using the reactions menu and finding the raise hand button. So whenever he calls your name, I would ask that you just raise your hand and then be prepared for a button that will pop up on your screen asking you to confirm unmuting, at which point you'll have 2 minutes whenever you start, and there will be a clock on the screen and it will count down, and as it hits 0, there will be a loud noise and we will encourage you to stop. So if you're having any problems, you can chat me. If you're here and you can't find the raise hand button, chat me and we will get you going next. So I'll put up the clock.
Thank you. I'm going to slightly correct Will because we will do more than encourage you. We will mute you. Will is pretty strict. So at 2 minutes.
Call that my Texas being too nice.
There you go. So first, let's go to Rabbi Joshua Stanton.
Go ahead, Rabbi. You can unmute.
Great to be with all of you. I'm the rabbi at East End Temple. I'm going to see if I can do this in 1 minute. It is a pleasure to see so many familiar faces. Suffice it to say that anti-Semitism is not something theoretical. Between Tree of Life Synagogue and Colleyville, what happened in San Diego, it is unfortunately alive and well. And based on my own lived experiences, unfortunately, something that is very present right here, even in New York City. I am a regular recipient of all kinds of hate mail and phone calls and other things. And so the two resolutions that are up for approval, one is at the national and international level, saying that Deborah Lipstadt, who is probably the iconic thought leader on anti-Semitism, its origins and everything else, should really finally be approved to be the special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. The second resolution is just saying that we need a clear definition of anti-Semitism if it is a form of hate that we are going to combat together. The definition is not controversial. It is very simple and very straightforward. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. These should be non-controversial items to advance. I think universal passing of them and unanimous passing of them would make a tremendous difference, would send a message both right here in New York City and far beyond that anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred and bigotry are not tolerated. So as one who has personally experienced anti-Semitism more than I'd care to admit, as one who oversees a community that has far more security than it should ever need, I ask you to support both measures.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Matt Bauer from the Mattis Adamy Bid.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for letting me join the meeting. And just first, I want to say thank you to our to Detective Lombardi for his presentation. We so much appreciate all the support that the 19th Precinct has been giving to our community in Madison Avenue. We pleased to hear from the district attorney. We're actually part of that small business advisory committee that he discussed. Be soon meeting with our borough president here on the Avenue and taking him on a walkthrough. And I want to congratulate Councilmember Menon for holding her first Small Business Committee hearing. And I think she'd agree that the best way to support small businesses is to shop at them. So it's my pleasure to say a couple of the new stores that have opened up in the last couple of days on Madison. St. John at 655 Madison is open, selling great knitwear. Nardo's Design opened up a bridal atelier at 807 Madison Avenue. They also have evening wear. It's really great. On Monday this week, Marie Shea opened up at 1071 Madison Avenue, which is super. Their first store, the second store here in New York City. And we also have galleries that are opening on the Avenue in the last couple of weeks. Sous Trois Gallery opened up at 17 East 71st Street. And on Monday, the Upsilon Gallery opened at 23 East 67th Street. And they're both participating in our Madison Avenue Gallery Walk, which will be taking place on the 14th of May. So look forward to seeing you all there and seeing you on Madison Avenue. And thanks again, CB8, for all that you do.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all that you do. We're going to go next to George Todorovic. I hope I pronounced that right. I apologize if I didn't.
George, just unmute. There you go.
Hi, good evening. My girlfriend and I here moved to the neighborhood recently last summer, and I'm glad to hear that another compost site was added because when I was researching, there was only the one on 96th Street, so it's good to know that the one at Asphalt Green is being added. And when I was researching, I saw that Councilmember Menon was in discussions with the property owner and two other community members about a vacant lot on the corner of 78th and 1st Avenue. I see that the property has some DOB violations and has been vacant for a long time. And in the article I read, I heard that the Parks Department might be able to help with some funding. So it would be nice to add a community garden since our district doesn't have any. And I know a lot of other districts in New York City do have community gardens, not only for compost, but also for respite and a nice place to hold events. And it would be nice if we could add it to this October's district needs statement so that the Parks Department could have it on their radar and allocate some funding for it.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Alita Camp.
Thank you. I'm just wearing two hats. The first is as a member of the public, which is that there is movement in Albany to make cocktails to go permanent. While this is great for people who enjoy cocktails in the restaurants, they're not the only small businesses. I polled a few liquor stores. 2/3 of them feel that cocktails to go will affect their business. If you own or know someone who owns a liquor store and they feel that it will negatively affect them, I'd urge you to call your state legislators and tell them that cocktails to go on a permanent basis may not be the best idea. Next, I'll put on my community board hat and say that we're having an art show at James Cagney Place scheduled right now for June 11th, pending, of course, the weather. So I encourage all artists and crafters to submit artwork or to submit images of your artwork or your crafts to info@cb8m.com by May 6th. And hopefully we'll see you there. I urge the public to join us as well. And then last, also as a CB8 member, we're having a congestion pricing task force meeting on Monday. I'm mentioning this because the notice is short. The agenda should be posted and we urge you to come and express your views about the items on the agenda, the listing of issues relating to exemptions and discounts so that we can bring something well-informed to Albany and to those making rules. Thanks so much. I'm done.
Thank you. Thanks. Next, we will go to Lauren Trapanotto.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Trapanotto, and I would like to discuss the demolition site that Councilmember Menon mentioned happening on 90th and 1st. I live across the street, and this has been going on since mid-December. They have construction permits through 2023, so there is no end in sight. What's happening here is there is demolition with hydraulic jackhammers that starts at 7 a.m., sometimes earlier, which is illegal, and goes past 5 p.m. sometimes. They're extremely loud. They reach decibels over 90, goes on literally all day. I work from home like a lot of us do. As you can imagine, this is extremely disruptive. It's hard to take work calls. I sit at my desk with earplugs. I suffer from migraines that can be debilitating and affect my entire body. And this is not a very helpful thing for something like that. My furniture shakes. There are people on my floor that have newborn babies, and I do not know how they are surviving through this. Myself and other neighbors have escalated this to 311 and our council member. She's been very helpful in escalating and chasing the recent summons that she mentioned. So thank you so much for that, Council Member Menon. But what I fear is that this summons is going to be nothing but a slap on the wrist. My intent is not to make the construction crew's life harder, but I would like to have a constructive discussion about what is clearly a broken system, how we can change that, what kind of laws we can put in place to have things like real noise mitigation, things like limiting the hours for this kind of jackhammering or sound barriers. A lot of us are working from home and will be long-term. My office doesn't even have, or my company doesn't even have an office in the city anymore. COVID changed how we live and work. We need to change our laws and our systems to adapt with that. So I realize this might be something to discuss with the appropriate committee at a later time, and I'd love to do that and would invite you to reach out to me to talk more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, yes, we heard Councilman Menon refer to that issue, and we'll follow up with you on figuring out which committee may be able to look into that. Next, we will go to Susan Fruckman.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes. We see you.
So I am also, excuse me?
Go ahead.
So I'm also here to talk about the construction site on East 90th that we have been talking about. I live on East 88th, and 2 blocks away, this still wakes me up at 7 o'clock every morning. There's no other noise at 7 a.m., so the source is not in question. And I know the people who are across the street have it even worse. I do want to respond to the comments about summons. There was a summons on Monday. The site was quiet yesterday and the noise was back today. So clearly that summons didn't work. Also in regards to all of the previous summons, I want to point out that Julie Menon's chief of staff, Jonathan Zott, had shared with me there was an inspection done on 12/25, which is Christmas Day, and quote unquote, no violation was found. Of course not, because it was Christmas Day. So I feel, and then of course, DEP closed all of our complaints. So I don't feel like the system is working for us. And as Lauren had said, we're not questioning whether or not this is illegal, but there are aspects of the noise code that are not being, or that are being broken, including that the noise cannot be more than 10 decibels higher than the ambient noise. And we have seen that it could be as much as 40 to 50 decibels higher. And also that sounds that occur abruptly for a short duration, called impulsive sounds, are restricted. That's what we're hearing at 7 a.m. So whether or not they have a sound mitigation plan posted, it's not being followed. It's not taking into consideration the neighborhood in which the work is being done. This is a residential neighborhood. I don't know why this was even approved for a mid-block construction project, but something has to be done. We can't go through this for another 4 or 5 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Roseanne Alberts, and after that will be Andrew Ravishir.
Roseanne, if you could raise your virtual hand so we can find you, or chat me if you are here, but I do not see your name in our participants list.
Okay, so while we're waiting there, why don't we go to Andrew Ravishir.
Go ahead, Andrew, you can unmute.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. There are so many emergencies, collectively in the news and sometimes privately, that demand our attention. We don't think about breathing air or our hearts beating while the news is so dire. unless and until not breathing or not having a functioning heart is the emergency. That is to say that environmental matters are with us all the time, every day and night, whether a mom and pop shop opens or closes, or whether we get a new building or not, or whether we restore a park or are concerned with crime. Environmental protection is with us all the time. We seem to all be agreed that our remediation and vigilance in all environmental matters is necessary. It's urgent. Environmental considerations must permeate all of our CB8 decisions. Overly tall buildings, commonly called monster talls, are the single worst climate change polluters we have in the city. They're over 5 times as bad as cars. Monster tall buildings are responsible for our urban heat islands. That is the harmful interaction between the monster talls to trap heat and particulate matter in our neighborhoods. We must be noisy and persistent in our efforts in communicating with all our elected officials to create appropriate zoning, such as the 210-foot height cap. We need to reach out to council members that are not from our district and state representatives outside of our area. We need to build strong, wide-ranging, and long-lasting coalitions. Can I count on our CB8 members to be noisy, persistent, and reach out? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that we don't see Roseanne Alberts, so that is it for the public sessions. Thank you, everybody, and we will move to the next item of the agenda, which is adoption of the agenda. So we can get a motion to adopt the agenda. That would be great. You could do it with a thumbs up.
Hyena.
Excellent. And those are seconds too. So is anyone opposed to adoption of the agenda? No? Excellent. Thank you. Next, adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. Again, thumbs up will suffice. I see Rebecca's doing it. Is there a second? Yes, I see some seconds. Anyone opposed? No? Excellent. So we've already had the Borough President's report, so we will move now into the elected official report. So if you are here representing an elected official, please raise your hand. And each of you will have 2 minutes, and we will go in order of when you raise your hand, and we'll start with Audrey Tannen from Senator Kruger's office.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Okay, hello, everyone. We know a lot's going on, but I wanted to talk to you about something that I know is of concern and a focus for CB8, obviously, because we're meeting tonight instead of next Wednesday, and that's the open meetings law, which we all understand will be set to expire if the state of emergency, which is due to end on March 15th, is not extended. We do want you to know that Liz, who always, she has a very clear and good voice. She's advocating and representing that these changes should become permanent, that the law should be forever changed. But we do want you to know that a lot of her colleagues don't agree. I'm only speaking about the Senate now. So there's no consensus yet that these laws will become forever changed. So we urge you, if you know folks, friends, relatives who live in other parts of the state who benefit from being on PTA meetings or village boards or other things, have them call their state senators and let them know how much they appreciate being able to have meetings virtual, and it helps with participation and all those things that it does. But we don't want to mislead you. Right now, there's no consensus. And at present, there will not be a forever change on this law. She's going to continue advocating. We will keep you informed. And the worst scenario is we'll see you all. We really will see you all in April. So have a good rest of the meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I don't know when we originally decided to move the meeting, we did it to accommodate quorum, but the fact that it's allowed us to get in under the wire with open meetings is also helpful. All right, let's go next to Amanda Wallen.
Hey everyone, it's good to see all of you, and I just want to start out by echoing everything Audrey said. We've been strong supporters of making this change to the open meetings law permanent, but there are definitely folks who don't agree. So anything you can do to make that happen, as much as we'd all love to see your faces in person, we also don't want to make any of you sick. So please help us help you. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the budget, since this is the last chance we'll get to talk to you before that happens. We have been working hard to get some policy into the Assembly One House budget. Particularly, we're working on turn on the tap, making sure that folks who are in prison have access to tap, the Clean Slate bill, which I know you've all heard about quite a bit, and our Challenging Wrongful Convictions Act. We've been pushing to get into the Assembly One House. We'll find out about that in the next days, so we're hopeful. And we've also been working to ensure that CFE funding gets to all of our schools. We're hopeful that this year will be another on-time budget, and that I also just saw announced, I want to make sure that you guys know, we're pushing to get $500 million into the Assembly One House for energy costs for people who are in arrears on their bills. So we're hoping to get an on-time budget that is going to deliver for the people of New York State like we've done in the past, and we'll be able to tell you more about that next time. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next let's go to Lucy from Carolyn Maloney's office.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy, and I'm the representative from Congresswoman Maloney's office today. My colleague Marissa is out this week, but we still wanted to come on and provide you guys with some updates from our office. On the federal level, our office is monitoring the situation in Ukraine. Congresswoman Maloney feels deeply for the people of Ukraine and continues to express support for the country's sovereignty and to territorial integrity. She recently voted to pass bipartisan legislation to call for continued sanctions against Russia and an immediate ceasefire. The Oversight Committee, of which the Congresswoman is chair, has recently been focused on the economy at home, holding a hearing to examine the economic gains of the American Rescue Plan, and found that it has greatly improved the standing of the United States economy, putting it on pace for faster and stronger recovery than other nations. In other news, Congresswoman Maloney recently joined local restaurant leaders in support of legislation to provide federal aid to the industry. The Congresswoman is currently leading 3 pieces of legislation that would replenish the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and provide other protections and relief to local restaurants. More locally, the Congresswoman recently met with the new CEO of Kohler Hospital on Roosevelt Island and is optimistic about the changes being implemented under the new leadership. Our office continues to monitor the situation in conjunction with Kohler Task Force. The Congresswoman also recently joined Councilmember Menon, former Councilmember Kalos, and Principal Saliani in unveiling a new gym at Eleanor Roosevelt High School. This new gym is the culmination of advocacy efforts by the Congresswoman and former Councilmember Ben Kalos to the School Construction Authority to build gyms for schools in need in the Upper East Side. Should you need any assistance with any other federal services or have any questions about the information shared here, you can always reach our office at 212-860-0606 or email us at urgentny12@mail.house.gov. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Courtney Farrisee from Assemblymember Seawright's office.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Courtney Farrisee, and I'm Chief of Staff to Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright. Assemblymember Seawright is proud to announce the passage of her legislation requiring the REOC CEO to be resident of Roosevelt Island. Another bill she sponsors is on the move in the Senate to require certain members of the Board of Directors to be residents of Roosevelt Island. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, Assemblymember Seawright has been participating in budget hearings. The Assembly One House budget will be voted on Monday. Some of the initiatives Assemblymember Seawright is fighting for this year are equitable access to specialized cancer care to assure individuals access to National Cancer Institute designated cancer centers. She's fighting for legislation to reinstate the New York State Stem Cell Science Program and restore its funding in the amount of $44.8 million. She's pushing back against the governor's proposal to eliminate the FAR 12 cap on residential buildings in New York City, because we all know that increased density does not yield affordability. And for $1.25 billion in additional funding for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We'll continue to provide you updates through the budget, and we hope that you may join us for an upcoming event. We hold PPE giveaways at the district office from 12 to 2 every Thursday. Take advantage of our no-cost Tuesday housing legal clinic and notary services. We have our annual Women of Distinction event coming up on Monday, March 21st at 7 p.m. We changed the date from March 16th. So again, that's Monday, March 21st at 7 p.m. And please don't hesitate to reach us if we can be of assistance. Our number is 212-288-4607. You can email us at cwriter@nyassembly.gov or stop by our office at 1485 York Avenue. That's between 78th and 79th Streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Mina White from the Borough President's Office. I think I hopefully pronounced that right. If not, please let me know. But she's the new liaison from the Borough President's Office, succeeding Isabel.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I do just want to just briefly introduce myself. Mina White, again, liaison for Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine. And we do have our Deputy Borough President, Keisha Sutton James, on the line. So please.
Mina, I wanted to be able to introduce you. I apologize for not setting this up properly. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that you have a new and fabulous liaison. Mina hails from Assemblymember Al Taylor's office and has done fantastic work. Those who have worked with her across the other community boards that she's been active on know her, love her. We are thrilled to have her partnering with CB8 right now. So welcome, Mina, that's first. Secondly, I just wanted to really quickly, since I see my clicker going, touch upon, just reiterate that which Senator Kruger's office said around community boards. Many of you probably know that Mark Levine sent out a letter giving some guidance on what community boards can and can't do, given what we currently know around how we can function after the open meetings law is reversed. And as we know that that Mark is working alongside with Senator Hoylman on pushing legislation that would enable hybrid meetings, and we're hoping that that will go through. But we of course believe that that'll take some time. So so we're preparing for next week being able, having in-person meetings. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, because Mark didn't, that he also has been very active in calling for the seizure of Russian oligarchs' assets here in Manhattan as a response to the Russian invasion, which of course these assets have skewed real estate values and have been used as a laundering mechanism.
Thank you very much. And welcome, Mina, and we're really looking forward to working with you. So thank you for being here and welcome. All right, let's go now to my report, the chair's report. So several folks have mentioned the pending expiration of the open meetings law suspension. So I will send an email around soon to board members talking about kind of where things are with that and what we're likely to do in the near term about that. I will, Councilmember Ronan mentioned the hearing earlier this week of the Small Business Committee. So I did testify there as chair of CB8, and I know others from the community board did as well on behalf of our small businesses. So I'm glad that we participated in that. And then lastly, I just want to mention we're all extremely concerned about the situation in Ukraine and the horrible Russian invasion that has taken place there. And so I think we'll put in the chat some information about how folks can donate to help and ways to help out. And one last thing I'll note on that issue is there are efforts underway to try and organize an event for solidarity, to show solidarity with Ukraine. It's possible that it'll be this Sunday, although it may not be. So I think that's sort of still in flux, but we will send around more information about that as soon as we have it. But I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar as something that is coming up. So with that, I will turn it over to Will for his report.
I will be very brief. Say I've added the links for anybody who wants to contribute to the situation going on in Ukraine, and as we're all very worried about that. They're in the chat. So if anybody needs them and sees this on the YouTube, just email our office and we can send that to you. Other than that, I'll defer my report and move the agenda.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so let's go to our committee reports, and we are going to start with the Youth Education and Libraries Committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Taina and Rami.
Hi, everyone. We have 2 unanimous resolutions this month. They are a little bit different than what the community board is used to hearing from the Youth Education and Libraries Committee. So this month, we had a meeting discussing anti-Semitism, and as spoken about in the public session, 2 resolutions surrounding both anti-Semitism in the district and anti-Semitism in the US and somewhat globally. So Taina, Rebecca Dangor, and I worked together on this meeting, just as young Jewish members of the community board. Where all 3 of us are involved in the faith in different ways, but we all really feel strongly about this issue, and we all felt that the community board needed to address anti-Semitism in a proactive way. This is not the first time the community board has addressed anti-Semitism in the past 3 years, 4 years, but it's a due time that we address it again, especially in light of the recent incidents within the community. Thank you to Rabbi Josh, who spoke in the public session. So we also felt that we would love for these resolutions to pass the full board unanimously. I think it will send a really strong message that Community Board 8 stands against hate and stands against bias and stands against anti-Semitism and stands with the Jewish community in both Community Board 8 in Manhattan, in New York, and in the United States. The resolutions were unanimous in committee, but attendance was pretty low from board members. There was tremendous support from the community in the committee. So just for context. Also thank you to Manhattan DA Bragg for addressing hate crimes that have arisen both in our district and throughout Manhattan. We really need these crimes to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So we have 2 resolutions. One is advocating for the confirmation of Deborah Lipstadt. She has been nominated by President Biden to fill the office of the Special Envoy on Anti-Semitism at the State Department. That office is currently vacant and has been since President Trump has been in office. So we're really calling on our federal representatives to move her nomination along, get her confirmed through the Senate. And the second one is adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. That the definition is pretty straightforward. It's written in the resolution. The reason why is written also in the resolution. In New York, we need this definition on the books so that it can give our prosecutors the tools to fully prosecute anti-Semitic attacks. It really defines anti-Semitism, which there's no true definition in New York at the moment. That's all expansive, and this definition has been adopted by numerous U.S. states, 5 states, the State Department, a few other federal branches, including the Department of Education, over 30 countries, and thousands of community-based and nonprofit organizations. So again, I hope we can call on our elected officials tonight to get some sort of legislative action similar to what we're talking about tonight in our resolutions.
Yeah, and if I could just add, Rami, I thank you. You did a great job summarizing that. I think just as a relatively new member of the board, I just want to make a blanket statement that I think we need to figure out more productive ways for members of the board to bring up issues to the full board that don't neatly and squarely fit into the jurisdiction and purview of any particular committee, without getting too deep into the background of us spending over 6 weeks figuring out how we could present these resolutions or even start a conversation at the full board level about issues that felt deeply important to us on personal levels, but actually deeply relevant to the community, given the rise in anti-Semitic attacks in our very neighborhoods and across the country. I think I just call on the board in general to, I think we need to think creatively about how we encourage younger, newer members like Rebecca, Rami, and myself to actually bring issues like this that matter to us deeply and that are important without having to go through the, frankly, bureaucracy of having to present it through a committee that some may or may not question sort of what the relevance it is of the topic. Rami and I happen to co-chair the Youth Education and Libraries Committee. And he, myself, and Rebecca, were the ones that wanted to present these resolutions. So it went through the Education Committee. We believe it is relevant to schools and children and youth issues, but we also believe it's relevant to every single other committee that this board has. And so I just wanted to share that, and also just wanted to add that the three of us are still, we're really committed to having a special meeting or a forum that the community board sponsors, and that I hope many of you are supportive of, where we have much more of an open dialogue and conversation with leaders in the faith community, like Rabbi Stanton, who's actually the rabbi at the temple that I belong to, East End Temple, which is in Gramercy Park, and with elected officials in our own community who are very active on these issues. And so it was important to us to present resolutions that were actionable and that make a difference, but we also would love to engage with the full board in a full conversation about these issues. I see a number of hands up, so I think Rita's is the first.
Why make a motion to approve both resolutions? I want to take this moment to congratulate Ravi, who has been accepted at Tulane. So a round of applause for Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
I make a motion. It's my job to embarrass people, so I have it down. I have it down to a fine art. I make a motion to approve both resolutions.
Do we have a second?
I see
Barbara seconds. And I think it's a calling of the question because they're on the floor as it is. So I think that's. So I think unless folks are opposed to calling the question, I think we can vote. Or unless there's opposition to taking the two together.
So if you still have your hand up, I assume you'd. Okay. So Sandrea is going to take the roll.
Okay, so we're going to take them together, correct?
Yep.
Please.
Wonderful. So please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Seeing no hands, these two resolutions pass unanimously. Congratulations.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next let's go to the Transportation Committee and Chuck and Craig.
You both can unmute.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Chuck, you unmuted? I assume you want to take this.
Okay. Yeah, we have one resolution, and it's a public hearing for 109 East 79th Street, an application for a new revocable consent to construct, maintain, and use a sidewalk planted area with lighting. This is a building that's about 19 stories high on 79th Street, and they have 3 areas of planting against the wall. And I think everybody felt that the plantings were done well, and they have adequate clearance. They have 11 feet 6 inches of clearance and to the sidewalk in most cases, and 11 feet 6 inches of clearances where there are tree pits. There are some trees that are having to be, they have 4 trees, three of them have to be temporarily removed, and they'll be replanted with new trees. And they consulted with the Parks Department and got approval of the kinds of trees that they could use. There was an issue about lighting. There is going to be some lighting of the planting areas, and there's also lighting of the lobby. And there's a question was raised at the committee about whether or not, how that would be controlled. And they didn't have the information with them at the time. And we asked them to submit that before the board meeting, and they promptly submitted and basically said the lights are on a timer, and they get shut off after, at 12 midnight on this timing. So the motion passed to approve. It was 9 plus 1 public member for and 3 against. And I don't know if we have some people who want to speak on this. I see Rita Popper first. See the hands raised. Rita first.
I really was for this. It's very important to bring as much light to the streets as possible, because I think that the lighting, either my eyes are going, but the lighting is dim in the city. So I am for that, and I call the question, but I'll reserve that for the other people to speak.
Okay. We have Michelle. Michelle, I know, has voted against it, so we should obviously hear from Michelle.
Yes, thank you. I didn't oppose it because of the lighting. The lighting is fine. And additionally, since they offered the further explanation after the meeting that it will be on a dimmer, that's fine. I opposed it because there are 3 planters in front of this building, one on either side of the main entrance, which, if my memory serves, was about 6 feet and then about 17 feet wide, and that imposes on the public way. I could live with that. What I objected to was further down along the building line, not relevant to the doorway. As a matter of fact, it's on the other side of a service entrance. There's an additional 6 foot by 25 foot of planter, and that's in the public way. It doesn't highlight anything like the planters that are on either side of the doorway. It's just sort of there. And if you can envision 25 feet of planter by comparing it to rooms in your home or in any way, it was really quite substantial. And it's not their property, it's in the public way. I usually vote against those things that violate the public space, but there are occasions that I support it. And in this case, I would support it on either side of the doorway. But going down this additional 25 feet really seemed excessive to me. And that's why I opposed it. Excuse me.
Thank you, Michelle. I would point out that this extends a little over 2 feet out into the sidewalk from the building line. And what the landscape architect told us was that this last planting, which is at a bit of a lower level, is just to, I think, give it some balance, because it's the building's a broad building, and they have plantings on either side of the main entrance. And then there's a service entrance, and this is past the service entrance and goes, beyond to that. And I think everybody thought it looked, it looked fine the way it was, and Michelle had her concerns, obviously. Barbara Rudder.
Like Rita, I love light. I would like to call the question.
Okay.
You heard the negative enough.
Is there a second? Is that Barry Schneider doing second? And okay, all in favor of calling question? Is there anybody opposed to calling question? Okay, I don't see anybody. I don't think Barry is. Why don't we, one of the secretaries call the roll?
If you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. Michelle?
No.
Alita?
No.
Paul,
No.
seeing no others, the item passes.
Thank you.
39 to 3.
That's all for transportation.
Thank you. All right, next let's move to the Landmarks Committee and David and Jane. I think let's unmute Anthony as well, please.
Are we on now?
You're good.
Good,
We hear
thank you. Okay, well, first we want to welcome back Jane, who is recuperating from a serious automobile accident. And we were really thrilled to have her back at the Landmarks Committee meeting. We also want to thank Anthony for having helped out in Jane's absence, and he has helped out once again for tonight's meeting. So we have 3 applications. Jane will take the first, Anthony the second, and I'll take the last. Jane, can we turn it over to you?
Thank you. You may. Thank you, David. And thank you for being so helpful since last December. It's amazing how quickly time passes. In any case, we heard 3 resolutions and I handled the first one, which was pretty benign. 20 East 79th Street, where a gallery has taken over the whole entire building. They were originally on the first 3 floors. Now they are on all 5 floors, and they'd like to put a sign on the frieze of the building, of the entryway, that it would be attached, the name of the gallery would be non-invasive into the original limestone historic material, because they would use some kind of an adhesive backing on the lettering. We thought it was minimally invasive and appropriate within the historic district. There were 2 objections. Alita, do you want to speak to your vote, your no vote?
I did object, partly because for the reason someone mentioned, which is that the adhesive could take off part of the limestone when it comes off, and that's an issue. The other one is because I walked by there yesterday. It is a beautiful block on 79th until you get to Serafina on the corner of Madison. But on 79th and 5th is the mansion that houses the Ukrainian, I don't know, consulate and museum or artwork. They have displays and exhibits. It's a gorgeous building. The whole street is limestone, or a lot of it. It's very elegant, and that would be the only building, again, once you get past Serafina on the corner, that would have any indication as large and as prominent of its commercial relationship. So that's why I opposed it. I don't think they shared with us that the entire block has nothing else on it that's of a commercial nature. And it's not to preserve things in aspic, but it's just to say this is a beautiful block, and it could remain that way. Thank you, Jane, and glad to see you.
Thank you. Marco?
Thank you. I would like to call the question if Elizabeth is not going to call the question, or you call Elizabeth first.
Well, Elizabeth, did you want to comment on the application?
Yes, I agree with the things that people support for this, but the reason I voted against it and will vote against it is this is an exceptionally fine building, and I have to hold a building of this quality to a higher standard. It was designed as a residential building, and I think its character has to be, original character has to be protected because it is such a fine building. I would, if it were a less good building, I would accept this, but I think that we protect the best.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Marco,
I know you the question, right?
Right.
Is there a second? I see Barbara Rutter. Oh, I see a bunch of Barry Schneider. Okay. I think we can call the roll on this. We'll go to a vote.
This one is me. If you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. Anthony?
No, actually, I'm voting yes, but there we go. Sorry.
Okay. Elizabeth,
No.
Lita,
No.
Blaine,
No.
Abraham,
No.
anyone else voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause? Seeing none, the resolution passes 38 to 4 to 0 to 0. Elizabeth?
Elizabeth,
I wanted to abstain. Thank you.
Oh, so 37 to 4 to 1 to 0. Thank you.
Anthony,
Okay. The second resolution is 38 East 75th Street. And the existing building, Will, maybe if you put up the slide that we had, that might just sort of illustrate it and make it quicker.
You should see it
There
now,
we go.
don't you?
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. So basically on the left is the building as it is today, which is, it originally looked like the building to its left, and it was stripped of most of its ornament and its stoop in 1929. And the proposal is to, in effect, no, well, not in effect, is to create an entirely new front for this building. And, excuse me, it's now going to be a 6-story limestone neoclassical structure. And they're also completely redoing the rear of the building and jiggling the floors a little bit, although that's not particularly a concern of Landmarks. There was some concern expressed that that this is too much architecture. And right at the end of the discussion, there was some commentary about about what is happening in, well, it's technically not the front yard. The building itself does not project beyond the street line, but there it is. Thank you. Again, the existing addition on the left, proposed on the right, and what the architects and their clients have chosen to do here is to put in 2 small planters, or propose 2 small planters, 2 little skinny limestone pillars, and align a new fence with the fence to the building immediately adjacent to the right. This will clearly require a revocable consent. The existing steps are about, my guess is not quite 2 feet out out beyond the property line. As you can see on the left, and this is more like 4 or 5 feet beyond the property line. So at any rate, this was an issue that came up. I think the committee felt very strongly that it was or at least in the main felt that it was a wonderful addition, and certainly an improvement over a building that is described in the Landmarks designation as a building of no style. So I think we have some people who wish to speak. And Alita.
Thank you. I'm only going to address the street part, which I know is a transportation issue, is a DOT revocable consent, but it also relates to the architecture because they are needing to jut into the public way because they are moving the door and therefore the stairs over to the center. I was there yesterday as well. That was the purpose of my walk, and saw that the tree bed leaves about 1 concrete square those concrete things that delineate the way the sidewalk is, which is about, judging by measuring with my feet, about 5 feet. If they do any work on the sidewalk and have to expand the tree bed, that will be even less, because there was an expanded tree bed just to the west of that building. So there is very little space. Because it's a result of the architecture, I'm bringing it up here because I find it kind of offensive. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. One thing I did not mention was that just in case you quickly read the resolution, we have made our approval conditional on approval of an application for revocable consent, and are making that a sort of a prerequisite for actually attending a hearing at Landmarks. Okay, Valerie.
So you anticipated my question, Anthony. I'm just trying to understand how that would impact the approval from Landmarks, because I think that's really important that the resolution contains that, because I would think that if we didn't approve the jutting into the sidewalk, that they would have to come back to Landmarks again with a new architectural plan, since it juts out. The architecture depends on the revocable consent.
Well, yes and no. I think that we're not here to discuss architectural design, but it certainly changes what they do in front if the revocable consent is not granted. And that's why we really asked them to come to Transportation Committee first.
So does that mean that they're going to come before a Transportation Committee meeting before this goes to Landmarks?
Yes.
And when is that going to be? I mean, we're sure that they're not going to go to Landmarks, major Landmarks before?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't even understand the term revocable consent in the context of this arrangement, because once they build the building, I don't even see how we could take it back.
Well,
I'm just, kind of stating the obvious. I mean, okay, well, I appreciate that that's in the resolution, and I would just like to move forward and say that they will not be getting a yes vote on a revocable consent for me for this. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown, I think, is next up.
Yes, thank you. I had the same concerns that Valerie had, and it's a problem for me. So thank you. Until it's resolved.
Thank you. Elizabeth Rose.
Thank you. So I've mentioned before that I grew up in a brownstone, albeit one on the west side, that was built as part of a group of 5. And typically these were built in ways that the facades complemented or mirrored the others that were built as part of the group. And what's being proposed here is nothing like what it appears the remaining 3 of the group were, either originally or now. And so I think if this is about landmarks and about preservation, if they want to rebuild the front facade, I would like to see them rebuild it to harmony with the original group. And certainly the building immediately to its east appears to be part of that group and a much different design. So I will be voting no, because this feels like it is completely different from the architecture of the original group and is not in that regard. I mean, it may mimic historic styles, but it's really not attempting to fit in with the group that it was built as.
Okay, I think I think the remaining buildings of the group, and I thought it was a group of 4, but the one immediately to the east is more or less, is more or less as it appeared originally. It's been changed, but not, let's say, less significantly, certainly. than the current 38. And the two further buildings further east are in fact, if anything, they look a lot like number 38 right now. So I think that the notion of a continuity and of a group has already been weakened significantly.
Nevertheless, that doesn't eliminate the potential of returning. If you're going to return the facade to something different, you could easily return that facade to at least be in harmony with the one immediately to the east. And that would also set an example for future renovations of the two that are further on to the east, which do seem to have at least a little bit more of their original character than 38 does. And again, the fenestration, for example, on the other buildings appears to be pretty much consistent with what it was originally, and what's being proposed on 38 is completely different. It does not match, it does not harmonize, and it was built as part of a group. And so if this is about preserving historical architecture, we should want this building to return as much as possible to what the original group was built. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll move on, but I have to say that the architecture of the city is an evolutionary process. It's iterative, and neighborhoods change as the buildings within them change. And I think it is the question of whether or not an individual building is appropriate to its next door neighbors does not necessarily speak to its appropriateness in an entire district. But that's probably more my opinion than everyone's. Russell.
My question is, did they agree to come back to the Transportation Committee? Do you hear me?
Yes. I thought they did, okay. David.
They did. Well,
great.
They
somewhat reluctantly, admittedly, but they did.
They were a little bit evasive. I mean, I pushed them, and they said they would come back, but they did not want to postpone going to landmarks either. So I think in the end, I think we all got the feeling that they would go to transportation first and then go to landmarks, but they would not wait for another board meeting, that they would go by whatever the Transportation Committee said. So if the Transportation Committee said it's okay for the revocable consent, they would go on that basis. And if the Transportation Committee objects, they're going to go to landmarks anyway, is my assessment. But on the other hand, they may choose to pull it back 2 feet. Anthony, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but right now they already have an areaway which is into the public way, and yes. what they're doing is they're pulling that areaway out another 2 feet to match the areaway that's next door. So in a worst case scenario, I think that all they would wind up with is a revocable consent for what they already have. And a best case scenario from their point of view, our Transportation Committee would feel that coming out another 2 feet and matching the adjoining building would not be a problem. But yes, they said they would come back and come to the Transportation Committee. And I can't conjecture at what they're going to do, but the impression we got is that they would come to the Transportation Committee, but they would not wait for another board meeting before going to landmarks.
David is absolutely right. And I think one thing we did feel was that the applicant, it's a pretty, it's Robert A.M. Stern is the firm that designed that facade, that they did not tell us immediately that they needed to go to transportation. They were a little bit disingenuous. It didn't come up until the very, very end of the presentation.
I think we all felt a little disappointed, maybe that's an understatement, in the fact that they were not upfront about that. The other side of the coin is, I'd just like to reinforce a little bit what Anthony said. There are many blocks in the city where you have unique individual buildings that are perhaps of a higher quality than the surrounding buildings. And to some extent, perhaps that says something about what might happen next in the block, as opposed to going backwards to something which is of a lesser design. I think that we all thought that the design itself was exceptionally well done, and that from that point of view, it deserved our approval, at least most of us. On the other hand, all of us felt that they should come to transportation first, and that the revocable consent needed to be a part of what they bring to our opinion about the revocable consent is part of what they have to bring to landmarks.
Thank you, David. I'm going to call on the others who haven't spoken yet, which would be Felice would be I guess the next person in line.
Thank you. I think my question was answered in what David just said. It looks like so would the building come out or the tree pit extension come out to the same depth as the two buildings alongside it, which is a little deeper than what they have originally? Is that what they're doing?
No, actually, they're lining up with the building to the west, which comes out a little. Oh, here we are. Okay, the building to the west, you see. Thank you, Will. They're aligning with that fence, and to the right, they're about a foot beyond the baluster to the building to the left, which would be to the east. And that's also a step down. And it's, yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much explains it. And that would leave about 5 feet between the edge of the tree pit and the new fence.
Okay, and so that's really the issue about that exacerbates the limited space on the sidewalk because of the location of the tree pit. Okay,
yes, absolutely.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, since there's always a danger that Chuck will call the question, I know that Alita wanted to speak again. So let's let Alita, Mrs. Brown, and Valerie speak, and then we'll call on you, Chuck.
I'm not calling the question.
Oh, you're not? Okay, awesome. Okay, Chuck. Okay.
All right, look, this is architecturally a very fine building, as the committee has said. If there's a clearance problem, they're going to have to talk to transportation, because transportation will not give them a revocable consent, even if they manage to get landmarks to approve the overall design. And so they have to get a revocable consent. And if there's a clearance issue, that's going to be transportation's call in the end. And I think your resolution covers it, that they have to come to see us. So I think it's going to be worked out. So I think that shouldn't be an issue in what we're doing now.
Thank you, Chuck. All right. We'll do Alita, Mrs. Brown, and Valerie, and then we'll see.
Okay, a couple of things. They were very evasive about going to transportation. They were clear that they didn't want to wait. They did not answer Michelle Birnbaum's question about how far out the planters extended. If the tree pit is expanded, it will cut it off even more. And the last time there was an issue with a revocable consent for a building that went to landmarks, what the applicant said was that landmarks would have approved a staircase going even further out. So I suspect, and I could be wrong, that this is a technique that they go to landmarks, they get the approval, then they come back and they say that landmarks approved it, which is exactly what they did the last time. We all know, as Valerie pointed out, that revocable doesn't really mean revocable. It just means that's what it is, with quotation marks around it. I just really wanted to emphasize that they were very, very clear. They did not want to wait until the next board meeting to go to landmarks. So given that, and that they didn't bring it up, I'm concerned about this because again, if the tree pit expands, it will stick further out. To Elizabeth Rose's point, when I went there yesterday, what I saw on the north side of the street was a series of buildings that had identical facades and another one down the street. And the harmony of buildings that are the same is really remarkable in a city that is so changeable and changed as this one. So I just wanted to say that I see your point, Elizabeth, and I'd have to agree that even though we don't see it necessarily on the south side of the street, I did see it on the north side, and it is really, the harmony is very calming. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Alita. Just one, excuse me, just one more comment. The four buildings, the four building group were built as speculative buildings in 1881. And the reason architects, speculators built buildings that looked alike was that it was less expensive and they were saving money on materials by duplicating their effort and their ornament across four buildings. Okay, Mrs. Brown, I see Rita also has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Based on Chuck Warren's statement that it would have to come to Transportation Committee, I want to call the question.
Okay, the question has been called. Those who are in, well, those who are in.
You need a second, Anthony, on the calling.
Sorry.
Chuck Warren.
Chuck seconds, Barbara seconds. Okay, and those who are, I guess, those opposed to calling the question. The question has been called and seconded and nobody seems to object. So could we call the roll?
Andrea, go ahead.
All right, greetings all again. Please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Alita?
No.
Elaine?
No.
Valerie?
No.
Cause?
No.
Elizabeth?
No.
Peggy?
No.
Okay, thank you. I guess, David, you, it's your baton.
Yes,
Thank you, Anthony.
Okay, it looks like it passed 37 yes. Sorry about that. 5 no's. I'm correct. And yeah, it passed. Thank you.
36 yes.
36? Okay. Thank you, Rami.
Will, can you please share the screen on the next one, which is 201 East 65th Street? This is an individual landmark. This is a very important modernist building, the first major modernist apartment house in New York, and the one that sets the standard and has set the standard. This is the third time these people have been back to us on the canopy, and they have hardly changed it. This is a unanimous decision that we felt that this canopy is inappropriate. The shape is awkward, blocks the view into the garden, that they've made no real attempt to find a solution that would be appropriate to the architectural character and the spirit of the original building and its context. So I guess the question is whether there is anyone who would like to talk to this, well, plus or get pro or con. Since nobody wants to talk to it, maybe somebody would like to propose calling the question. Elizabeth Rose.
So before anyone calls the question, this is just one that I find frustrating. I'm sure everybody on the committee does, since you've now seen it 3 times without any material change. Is there ever a point at which we say, look, guys, here is the kind of awning that we would approve? I think, it is a reasonable.
Let me say that we are not in the design business. And this goes back even to the one we just discussed, that Anthony talked about. We are here to rule on or to opine on context and appropriateness, not here to design. As an architect, I can tell you that I have some thoughts about how this could be appropriately done, but it's not our job as a community board to do that. And maybe they will finally get the message that they have to rethink what they've been doing by getting rejected a 3rd time in a row. And maybe what they'll even do is go to another architect who will have a different point of view about it, because apparently this guy has run out of ideas. But it's not up to us to propose a design. It's up to us to share with the Landmarks Preservation Commission our feelings about context and appropriateness. Anyone else? I see Barry Schneider's hand is up.
I'd like to call the question, please.
We have a second.
Michelle.
Okay.
Mrs. Brown's.
All right, so we'll call the question. Anybody opposed? Nobody's opposed, so let's call the roll, please.
Reminder, this is a disapproval, so a yes means no. If you'd like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. Elaine.
I had raised it before you explained it.
Seeing no hands, the disapproval passes unanimously with a vote of 42 to 0 to 0.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So let's go next to the Sanitation Committee, and I will turn it over to Kaz.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. I assume Billy's not here. Anyway, we had a short 2-hour meeting the other night. We had Keith Powers, Julie Mannon, DSNY representative Marissa Yaney, and 2 bids discussing sanitation. We all know there's budget cuts, but as you've heard tonight, the composting has been established at Asphalt Green, and Julie's in discussion for others. So really the motion is to approve or to basically reinforce the previous resolution that we, try and get more funding for sanitation. Any questions? You
have Craig, Valerie, and Rita.
Can we unmute Craig?
Hi, everyone. I very much appreciate the resolution, and I very much appreciate our council members' actions to get a new composting site up and running as of this Sunday at Asphalt Green. But I do want to remind everyone that back in April of last year, we passed a resolution actually calling for compost drop-off sites across our district. So we actually said in the resolution, 1 in the 60s, 1 in the 70s, 1 in the 80s, 1 in the 90s. So as much as I personally love this new location because it can't be closer to my apartments, I think the rest of the community would still benefit by having some. So I would hope that we could possibly reference the resolution from April 2021, where we talk about additional sites beyond just restoring funding. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. from the discussion tonight, Julie is in conference with other people for other drop-offs, but there was great opposition to corner composting sites. So it's a progress that Julie's working on, and hopefully we can all work on. Valerie opposed it. Valerie.
No, I didn't oppose it. I was just going to say I thought it was a wonderful meeting, and it was a really important discussion because sanitation is one of the premier issues in this district. And I wanted to commend Kaz and Billy on a great meeting, and also say, if just for the 2 seconds, if I may, since we have 70-something people, that I learned a new fact that I think is really important, which is that dog poop brings out the rats. So please make sure, those of you who are walking dogs, that you're cognizant of that. Everyone in your community would appreciate the proper disposal of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Rita.
What Valerie just said is absolutely true, because all the dogs that run in Rupert Park and nobody picks up, and the park is really overrun with rodents. I raised my hand to call the question.
Well, we've got Barbara before, so we'll postpone your calling the question until we hear from Barbara.
I was just going to make one comment. The poop, by the way, the Rat Academy was difficult for me because I have this thing about rats, but this is, it was an important meeting in terms of learning why we have rats. But in terms of the composting, I really commend Julie and the resolution. I am afraid that if we don't make it easy, I've talked to lots of people about it. If we're asking people to walk avenue blocks away within 2 hours, it's not going to happen, and it would be a vicious cycle. So one of the promises that were made, Kaz, I'm sure you remember, is that buildings can sign up, as mine did, to get composting at the building, and that's what was been cut. And I worry that it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's going to be so difficult that people won't go. I do urge I think the Environment Committee is going to address it, but the Sanitation Committee, I hope, also gives the ABCs of composting, because I think people really don't know what to do and what type of, how to store it and so on. And I think it'd be very important to learn how to do it.
Well, one other point that, Julie's in discussion with some others. I mean, if anybody on the board or any participants here tonight know of any sites, buildings that would volunteer to host the site, for composting, that would be greatly appreciated, and we'll be inundated with calls tomorrow.
Well,
So,
my building signed up for it.
Well, that's for the DSNY sign up for this would be for voluntarily composting, to allow anybody else coming to drop off at the building. But that's a discussion for the next one. Okay,
I'll have to learn who will pick up from my building. So what if my building says yes? How will it work? Who will pick up the composting? Where would it go?
DSNY, I assume DSNY would pick up as they do normally. We can get all the relevant information.
That's an important thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay, the question's been called. Anybody voting no, abstain, or I'll leave it up to the secretary. Sorry.
Yeah, any objection to calling the question?
No.
Okay, secretary.
Yeah, this one is me. If you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause, please raise your hand. Seeing none, the resolution passes. 40. Will, are we 41 or 42 at the moment? 42 to 0 to 0 to 0.
Thanks, Rami.
All right. Next, we will go to the Zoning and Development Committee, and Elizabeth and Anthony.
Anthony must be hiding somewhere.
No, I'm here.
He's unmuted. You guys go ahead.
I think our first resolution was dealing with the governor's terrible idea to remove the FAR cap on residential zones. I think that we were horrified with the idea. Our area has the current FAR cap is 12 in the state, and we want to remove that. The theory being that it will provide more affordable housing, but we have, I think, one of the two or the most intensely populated districts in the state, with FARs going from 4 to 12, 4 to 10 really, and 12 with bonuses. And we ended up with as crowded as you can be. We felt that this was very dangerous, and we recommend that they forget all this bad idea.
I'd just like to say, actually,
Okay.
Elizabeth, I'd like to say a couple of things before we have questions. One of them is a reminder for those who are not conversant in zoning yet, that floor area ratio, or FAR, is the total floor area on a zoning lot divided by the lot area of that zoning lot. It's thus the basic unit of building density under our zoning resolution, and can be used to express the density of an existing development as well as the potential development of a zoning lot. It does not, because it's a ratio, speak to potential use. It's a unitless number. The higher the value of FAR for a particular zoning lot, the bigger the building that can occupy that lot. And it's important to remember that this proposal, which would remove a limit that was built into the multiple dwelling law by amendment in 1961, would impose, and I'm reading from the resolution, but it's important that we sort of say this out loud. The proposed amendment, if enacted, the proposed amendment would impose no conditions that might encourage the creation of affordable housing. If enacted, the proposed amendment would impose no conditions that might combat rising housing prices. And if enacted, the proposed amendment contains no language or provisions that would combat homelessness, and the proposal contains no mechanism for augmenting services and city infrastructure to accommodate additional residential density. And the point that Elizabeth made, which I am just going to hammer every single time I have the opportunity, the population of density of New York City is over 31,000 persons per square mile, making it the most densely populated city in the United States. And only 5 other cities with a population over 500,000 have population densities greater than 10,000 persons per square mile. And so the point is that New York City is the most densely populated city in the United States. Manhattan is among the most densely populated, if it were a city, cities in the world. And the Upper East Side Community District 8 is in fact the densest in terms of population, has the highest population density of any city in the world, of over 200,000 people. And what this would do is it would allow the city to change the maximum floor area ratio for housing. And it's important to remember two more things. Affordable housing is no less expensive to build than non-affordable housing. And Any increase in allowable floor area would result in buildings that bring their developers the maximum profit, which is to say, no affordable housing. A vote against this resolution, make no mistake, is a vote for taller residential buildings with no guarantee of any additional affordable housing. Okay, sorry. Elizabeth, you can
It's
call.
pretty well a guarantee that you won't get it. And the quick and easy on FAR is the number of times you multiply the square footage of your lot to get the permissible square footage of your building. So that is it. So I although they want affordable housing, this is a house. What they will get is affordable housing for billionaires. Alita?
Thank you. We've seen a loss of affordable housing on the Upper East Side. There are no height limits on 2nd, 3rd, 1st, and York Avenues. City planning believes, when we met with them a couple of before COVID about reducing or putting in a height limit on those avenues, they were concerned about the loss of affordable housing. What they didn't realize was that these buildings do not come with affordable housing. Now, New York City, like many other urban areas, desperately needs affordable housing, but this is not the solution. The government gave up its obligation to create affordable housing and gave it to the private for-profit sector. We're not seeing any affordable housing. And on the occasions when there is an obligation to put in affordable housing, there is most frequently a loophole that allows developers and builders to put in affordable housing in some other cheaper borough or on some other cheaper parcel of land. We've not seen affordable housing going into the vast majority of buildings that are going up without height limits. So raising the cap on FAR just gives a huge gift to developers without any benefit to the community. What's really nice is being someplace like around the Flatiron Building or in Tribeca, where you look up and you see sky. We don't see that on those avenues, and we don't get the benefit of affordable housing either. And again, on those rare occasions when there is affordable housing, it lapses after 30 years. Mitchell-Lama, thousands of units is now market rate. You're probably also aware of the argument about Stuytown, when they wanted to make Stuytown all market rate from housing that was built for middle income people. Now, no one is arguing that we don't need affordable housing, but this is not the way to do it. Does anyone honestly think that the building on 78th and Lexington, where I believe starting prices are over $5 million, is going to put in affordable housing units? So this is not the answer. Making the Upper East Side denser and denser and denser is not the answer. When George Daines did a study and found that we lost, and I know I've said this before, thousands of housing of affordable units more than any other community district in Manhattan, thousands more than the next highest, which I think is CB7. With buildings that are going up to the sky. I just want to ask for your indulgence and read the letter that Liz Kruger sent, because I wrote to her. She opposes lifting the cap. And what she said is that too many residential neighborhoods are already burdened by overdevelopment, putting stress on communities, landmarks, and our city's infrastructure. This has been taking place with the current FAR cap in place. Lifting the cap without first conducting a detailed analysis of the impact on our communities and reforming New York City's environmental review process will lead to even more overdevelopment and benefit developers at the cost of residential communities. So again, this legislation is not designed to bring affordable housing to the outer boroughs. It's designed to, I don't even know what it's designed, but it really feels like a gift to developers. And I could go on and on about the impact of market rate housing on small businesses, on displacement of people, on all kinds of things. But the important thing is there is no guarantee of this doing anything but enabling developers to make more money at expense to all of us. Thank you very much.
Okay, Craig. Thanks a lot, Alita.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. I just want to explain to everyone why I am strongly opposed to this resolution. So let's just look at the big picture. We can all agree that we need more affordable housing. We also can all agree that the current system dictating development is far from perfect and has not yielded the affordable housing that we need as a community district or as a city. We all know about the loopholes that allow developers to game the system, and as a result, we as a board have tended to act in a protectionist manner and fought vehemently against any proposal that could be seen as a boon to developers, which is exactly why the Zoning and Development Committee put forward this resolution. But where has this defensive approach gotten us? I see the billionaires row super talls, which is not anyone's idea of smart development unless you are one of the billionaires living there or a developer profiting from it. I see low-rise buildings being torn down and becoming unaffordable luxury towers. I see a housing crisis that has no end because we have not addressed the fundamental challenges of a zoning code that doesn't do enough to mandate affordable housing. And I see us as a board pushing measures such as height limits that have no teeth in terms of requiring new affordable housing, and with no actions to rethink how floor area ratios should be better applied to both meet contextual and social needs. And this is with the existing 12 FAR cap in place. There's a lot of skepticism resulting from past battles with developers and the perception that they will always do the wrong thing. And maybe they will. But by supporting this arbitrary FAR cap, it basically sends the message that we are fine with the status quo and unwilling to attack the root deficiencies in the zoning code and city policies that allow for developers to deprioritize affordable housing and build as of right that isn't right. So I want to be clear, by opposing this resolution, it does not make you a puppet of developers or the real estate industry. It doesn't make you an evil person. It doesn't even mean that you are a fan of taller or bigger buildings, because it is not true that lifting the cap means taller buildings. That is controlled by zoning, not an FAR cap. It does mean that you seek change and understand that even if we were to never see a residential building with 12 FAR in our district, which is a perfectly reasonable position for anyone to support, it shouldn't prevent the city and state from trying to solve our affordable housing issues in a holistic manner that allows for this to be a tool that can and should be linked to much more stringent affordability requirements, and allow the city to work with its 59 community boards to find mutually agreeable places where over 12 FAR may provide benefits. Again, the state proposal is not going to upend the world. It places the onus on us as a city to come up with the necessary affordable housing provisions to support the lifting of this cap, and to do it in a responsible way where we won't see the adverse impacts that people fear. I hope my viewpoints are respectfully considered and hope that we can avoid passing a resolution that punts once again on anything that sounds as if it's pro-developer without critically dissecting the implications of doing so. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. Michelle?
Thank you. I couldn't disagree more. What I would say is if the committee or anybody else wanted to come up with suggestions to do what Craig wishes would happen, I think that's fine, but I don't know why it would have to be done after a vote like this, when you're now going to expand what's possible. You can come up with all kinds of solutions without doing something as extreme as this. We have seen no evidence in the city that building higher, building bigger, increasing FAR, we have seen no evidence that that increases affordable housing. I for one, can't point to any development where that was true. So that being the case, if the committee or anybody else wants to have a project where you're coming out, where you're going to propose something better, that's fine. But I don't see why you have to broaden the parameters, open it up to more problems, more disagreement, more concerns before you do that. So, to support the increase at this point, when there's nothing else on the table, to me sounds ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, we have no evidence that this would increase or help affordable housing. And on that basis alone, we should disapprove it. I wish they would stop tearing down all the tenement buildings. That's a way to preserve affordable housing. That's actually statistically, we can show that there is affordable housing in those buildings. We have no ability to show that there will be affordable housing in future buildings. Nobody is bound. There are no rules and regulations binding any builder, any developer to that at all. And I don't think it's a bad word. I don't treat it that way. I'm not anti-development. But as you heard the stats about the density of this community and also in terms of preservation and quality of life, I can say that we really don't want to see over the top development without any controls. Let's put the controls in first and then we'll worry about lifting the rules. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Rami?
I'll be brief here. What I'd like to echo what Craig said. I thought he was right on point with everything that he said. Anthony is correct as well that we live in the most densely populated neighborhood in the United States, the 76th Assembly District, the old lines, not the current lines for this coming cycle. The old lines housed 1.1 million people in an area that it housed over 130,000 people in an area of 1.1 square miles, which is the densest populated neighborhood in the United States. No debate there. Also, Community District 8, apparently, this is from an older study, but apparently we produce 0.9% of the city's unhoused population and / people in shelters. Yet we only replace 0.6 of the affordable housing. So I didn't say that too correctly, but what that means is that we are not replacing what we are producing. We are putting the burden of unhoused neighbors and unhoused neighbors due to our unaffordable neighborhood on other communities, which I don't view as a fair purpose. So lifting this cap will hopefully, and this is all a hope and dream, will hopefully bring us more affordable housing, which I think we should all support. So thank you.
Thank you. Peter Patch?
You missed Lynn.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. Hi, everyone. One of the things that I want to talk about housing really quickly and housing people in our community. Until we address what I think is the hugest elephant in the room, and that is we have never as a city or as a state acknowledged that housing should be a fundamental right of each person in our community. And until we do that, we will not ever be able to put into place the things that we need to protect people and to keep people housing in homes. We do not allow people to have a home as their right. And I think that that's something that fundamentally needs to be changed. Having said that, the next thing that I think is fundamentally important in terms of all of these housing issues is until we preserve a certain amount of residential real estate, a percentage of residential real estate that has to come out of profit centers for all of the builders, again, we will never be able to protect and to be able to have affordable housing in our district. And until we put those two key pieces into place, we won't be able to do anything that substantively creates affordable places, homes, and we need to start calling them homes instead of calling this residential real estate. We need to create and protect homes for people. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
I'm almost lost for words. I'm borderline sort of appalled and horrified at the the notion that take away the FAR limits without getting anything in return, particularly with regard to affordable units. When I first spoke to Ben Kalos about joining the board, I told him, and this was without any further thought, that I would like to see any time that affordable units are taken out, the resulting development should have at least that many affordable units included in the property. And I do want to say, I always respect what Craig has to say, but on this one, I could not disagree more completely. I am just appalled at the notion of just taking FAR away without anything in return that will contribute to the community and affordable units in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We have 13 people still who wish to speak on this issue. So I just remind people of that number. So in order to get to our dinner before we drop dead of starvation, I would ask people to be as succinct as they possibly can. Barbara Rudder?
I'm going to ask naive questions. I always say I always feel insecure as long as I've been on with people that know very well. Let me ask, I think it was something that maybe Craig said. So he said that zoning will determine. Right now, the zoning says you need certain FAR. So what that says is you can have a skinny building that's very tall or a short squat building. If you take the FAR away, won't we then have tall squat buildings, very wide buildings that will make it even, more dense than before? Am I right about that? I'm seeing different things. I don't, can you answer this?
Barbara, yeah, in a kind of fundamental way, yes. Allowing a higher FAR allows more bulk. And whether that bulk is taller or wider and taller, it's more floor area, it's more density. If it's residential, it's more people. And if it's more people, it means that there are more people on the subways, there are more people on the buses.
Right. It's not only more people, but the look of it, the shadows, the garbage that's outside and everything else that's associated be that much more. A second question, what does what effect will air rights have? I know at this point, if I understand correctly, you could build a tall building if you get air rights, which means I think you're preserving some of the low-rise buildings. Am I right about it? Pardon my naivete.
Yes. No. Yes. That's basically
now what you're
true.
saying is you won't need the air rights because you'll be able to build tall without the air rights, which means more of the low-rise buildings can be knocked down. Am I right about that?
Well, you could make the argument that, yes, that you would buy the property, if you want to maximize your profits and build the biggest building possible, you would do exactly that. You would buy as many of the tenement buildings as possible, and use all of the floor area. It really works the same. It works the same way it does now. It's just could be at a larger scale.
Well, yes, but what I understand now is if you buy, the buildings next door to me and somebody builds it, they will remain. But if you take away the FAR, it won't be necessary to buy the air rights. Am I right about that or not?
Well, it depends. If it's completely removed.
That's right. I'm saying that if we accept the city's change in zoning, if we get rid of the FAR. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I know what you're saying. Maybe that is a hard hypothetical, even for an architect.
Okay. And I just want to make one comment, and I know that Anthony, my thing. These buildings, not only don't they build with affordable, and I don't know what the definition of affordable is. I think that Elizabeth's affordable for billionaires is probably quite good. But they knock down the buildings for decades. We have empty buildings, which means all of those affordable houses that were removed are not even replaced. So even if, and I don't believe this would be true, these buildings are replaced with affordable, we've gone for 10, 15 years without any of the affordable housing. And it causes that much worse. So I like what Michelle said, which can we go back and say we're going to fight for certain changes along the way? And one of them would be that we do need a certain amount of buildings that are affordable. The other is how they could be built and so on. And that would certainly, it's not only for affordable housing, but I think help our quality of life. So I wasn't quite as naive as I was afraid I was going to be, right?
No.
Okay, good. I was nervous about saying anything.
Thank you, Barbara. David?
I think we're doing a lot of mixing of density and affordable housing. I'm in favor of not lifting the cap. I'm in favor of not having overly dense residential neighborhoods. But I also think that the affordable housing issue is a very complex one. You can make it part of the zoning, but if you don't have the financing, the financing programs in place, it's just not going to happen. Years ago when I started, there was 221D3, which was federally financed housing, and a lot of it was built. Then we wound up with Mitchell-Lama, and a lot of it was built. We're not making it possible for developers to make money by building affordable housing. I'll get very personal and tell you that I have a developer who would love to build over 1,000 units of affordable housing, and the city stood in the way and may still stand in the way. There are developers out there who want to do it, number one, because they feel it's important for the city, and number two, yes, they'd like to make some money on it. So with respect to the zoning itself, let's say that the cap is lifted. We still have New York City zoning, and New York City zoning is local, and whether the state has a cap or not, we can do what we choose as a city. But even if it were lifted, if we look at our light and air regulations, you can't just build a building that's going to go 1 mile high, as Frank Lloyd Wright once upon a time suggested, putting a building in the middle of nowhere. But in New York City, you simply can't do that. You have the size of the site. You have light and air requirements. That means that there's an angle. If you start at, let's say, 60 feet up, you have to have an angle of that sets the building back and keeps setting it back. But just think about it, at a certain point in time, that building winds up not being able to go any higher. We have, to some extent, ameliorated that for developers by allowing towers. So a tower, technically, depending upon the size of the site, is 40% of the site. So if a tower goes up at 40% of the site, it can go up pretty high and still provide a lot of light and air. But the other side of the coin is you can dictate the maximum height. And we have Andrew, who comes here every month and tells us that we should limit it to 210 feet for a whole variety of reasons. And there are limited height districts in New York. So all I'm saying is, yes, I think we should support this resolution, but I think we should understand that affordable housing is a very complicated project to make it happen, and that because of its complexity, we shouldn't be forever discussing it tonight in relation to whether the cap should be lifted or not. I recommend we certainly pass this to not lift the cap. The other side of the coin is affordable housing is a very complex issue, which we're not going to solve tonight.
Thank you, David. And I think that the issue really is removing the cap, which is a terrible idea, I think, and it has nothing, in my view, to do with affordable housing, but that's the excuse they're giving to promote this bad idea, which is why we've been sidetracked into this.
The reality, sorry, Elizabeth, is that they've shown that affordable housing, I'm inferring from everything I've learned about affordable housing, the taller the building, the more anonymous the building, the less the sense of community, the worse the affordable housing. So I think you're right. The whole issue is it's the wrong reasons. But I still think, even if it's the wrong reasons, that they want to lift the cap, we still want to oppose it.
Yeah. Well, one of my concern is if step one, lift the cap, step two, lift our caps. And I think that this is the time to stop it before they get, develop this a little farther and make it even worse. But anyway, okay, next is Rebecca.
Hi, I have two brief points. The first is on behalf of a member of the public, Andrew Fine, who can't speak because we're in executive session. He just had a couple of comments and I thought it was worth raising. Number one, when the tenements go down, affordable housing always seems to be replaced by luxury. Second point is that he agrees with Michelle 100%. Why should we make it easier for developers by killing the FAR? And on the third, and he is speaking in his personal capacity and not as a representative of the East 86th Street Association, he has an idea, which he calls the 210 plus kind of 50 over 50, a 210 height limit, but expandable to 350 if 50% of additional space is dedicated to affordable housing. And then what I was going to say is I raised my hand before Adam did, and before all of these hands were raised, I noticed that he was one of the two people who voted against this resolution at the committee level, and Billy isn't here. So I would really like to hear his perspective before it's called to question, and I'm happy to yield the rest of my time to him if that's possible.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, so the way that I think that people need to think about this, and I don't mean to be crass, but I feel like some of you are not paying attention to what's going on. Okay, throughout Manhattan, you have FARs of up to 33 where you can build office buildings. The FAR that's 12 now, if they lift it, we still have stated zoning, the highest density in our communities, C19, C28. If we were to change that zoning, it would trigger mandatory inclusionary housing, thereby 25 to 30% of any new development being built in that rezoned area would have to have those levels of affordability. So it's not like they're going to increase it from a 12 to a 15, a 16, and 18, and then people are just going to build 18 FAR luxury towers. They would trigger mandatory inclusionary housing if the zoning was changed from the underlying 10/12 FAR to a higher density. So when it comes to two things can happen at the same time. Anthony can be 100% right about it being too dense in the neighborhood. But the flip side is it can also be right that if you raise the FAR cap, it would in fact trigger more affordable housing if people take advantage under a rezoned MIH site. So that's why I voted against it, this resolution.
Thank you. We have so many speakers, and I don't want to cut anybody off, but I also don't want to prevent us from discussing the next issue. Is there Anthony, what do you feel that should we?
No, I think we have to let everyone speak.
Excuse me?
Maybe not a second time. I think we have to have everyone speak, maybe not a second time.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how everyone can speak in the next 4 minutes. But anyway, we'll go ahead.
Just
Mrs.
encourage
Brown.
everybody to be as concise as you can, and don't repeat points that others have made.
Sorry?
Thank you. I'm sorry, Russell. Could you repeat what you just said?
I was just saying folks should be concise as possible and don't repeat points that others have already made.
Thank you. I'll be as abbreviated as possible. I I feel that we need to put controls in place first. Developers want to build on the Upper East Side, and we need to play hardball. Maybe I'm naive, but we need to say to them, you want to build, then you have to consider doing X number units of affordable housing. What I mean, affordable, between 30 to 80% AMI, so that middle income people can have an opportunity as well. And we need to be very, very clear. We need to have legislation that's going to correct the zoning and the FAR cap, et cetera. We need to let them know if they want to do business, this is the way it's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Rita?
I'm going to be very brief. You know, I've been knocking my head against the wall for 14 years. Affordable housing, according to Adam Wald, whom I happen to think is brilliant, is that affordable housing to developers are 165% of the AMI. Now, that's not really affordable. What Mrs. Brown just said, 30 to 80% is affordable. Also, the brownstones, the walk-ups, not all of them are affordable. If people have moved out and the landlord has made some beautification to the apartment, they are almost market rate and they are walk-ups. But I'm just going to leave you with one question before I ask to call the question. The question is, what will happen to New York, to us on the Upper East Side, if there is no affordable housing? And I mean affordable as Mrs. Brown just enumerated, 30 to 80%, I'll even go to 100%. What will happen if we don't have affordable housing? China is now answering that question. We have to find the people who can answer it here. 25 years ago, Mao Zedong said only one child. So they listened and they only had one child. Now they don't have a workforce. And so they said, okay, now you can have 2 children. To all the new people, definitely go out and have more children. Only that group that was born to one child per parent, they don't want to get married. They don't want to have any children. And China is very worried, where will they get people to handle the billion people who are there? So I think we could discuss this all night. I'm changing my tact. My tact is what will happen if we don't have affordable housing. And I'd like to call the question.
I don't think you can speak.
How many people?
I believe we have Elaine's thumb up.
People will have some people still have a lot to say, I'm afraid. So does anyone agree that we should call the question?
I don't think you can call the question after speaking. I think you can, if you're called on, you can call the question, but I don't think procedurally it's to speak and then call.
Okie dokie, Lane.
Call the question.
Is there a second?
Yes, several.
Okay, several, yeah. Those opposed to calling the question? Maybe we have to do a hand raise or something. Small number. So
yeah, if you're opposed to calling the question, put your hand up, please, using the raise hand feature.
Thanks, Will.
Give it a couple more seconds, but unfortunately, I do not think that the nays here went out. So the question is called.
So I guess you have to lower everyone's hand.
And I believe Sandra is doing this vote.
Okay.
Okay, the
Yes.
secretary, please call the roll.
Yes, please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Barry,
I'm voting no.
Greg,
No.
Craig,
No.
Adam,
No.
Romney,
No.
Paul,
No.
Felice,
No.
John,
You missed Taina.
oh, yeah, I see that, but okay. Tina,
No.
John,
No.
Carolina,
No.
Miss Brown,
No.
Lori,
No.
Anthony.
My hand's not up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
That's okay.
sorry. I'm sorry. And Sandra, no. Myself, no.
Are
I'll
there
get
any
back.
others?
Yeah.
Giving it a last call. Doesn't look like it.
Wilma,
Wilma,
Wilma, go ahead and unmute. Wilma? Wilma Johnson, can you speak to let us know your vote? You were unmuted. Go ahead, try again. Wilma, unmute one more time. It's *6 to unmute.
go ahead. You're unmuted. It says you're unmuted, Wilma.
Wilma, you're unmuted. Go ahead and oh, nope, now she just muted again. I saw Sarah Chu's hand go up. I just want to make sure.
I did too. I did too. And it went back down. Sarah, are you trying to vote?
No, I'm not trying to vote. I accidentally hit the wrong button. I'm sorry.
Wilma, it's *6 to unmute, and then as soon as you do, we can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Can
Perfect.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. It's no.
Thank you, Wilma.
All right. Thank you. I'll be back with the tally.
Oh, Anthony, you got muted somewhere in there.
Now I'm back. Thank you, Will. Okay, while we're waiting, there was a second resolution, which was on our concerning the restaurant at 220 East 81st Street. And it's possible use as a catering facility. It's the resolution is sort of clear. So the point that I think the committee was trying to make was that there is nothing to prevent this establishment from acting as a catering hall at least part of the time, if for no other reason than the Liquor Control Board is so let's say poor on enforcement. And so anyway, so that's what the resolution is about, and effectively to say that the use of this restaurant as a catering facility would be in fact in violation of their grandfathered zoning, since it's mid-block in an R8B zone, and should in fact, if in fact the use had been discontinuous at some point for 2 years since 1961, it would have in fact even lost that status, as I think Marco pointed out at the time. So anyway, we have some people lined up. Chuck?
Yeah, look, this resolution is out of order on a number of grounds. Number one, we already took action on this. We have a resolution on this, and the resolution was passed at our last board meeting on February 16th, and it has a stipulation that says, and that's all I'll read, is that part of it, that says the applicant agreed they will not use the rear yard and they will operate as a restaurant and not a catering facility, and only occasionally host private parties. They also have a ramp for, the front entrance for accessibility. Now, that whole issue was brought up. It was talked about. It was decided. In addition, the applicant said that they had something from the buildings department that said they were use group 6 restaurant, not use group 9 catering hall. And that means, and so it's not an issue, but we cannot take an action here when we've already acted upon it. It's totally out of order. And that's the reason this should not be considered tonight. And I'll ask our chair, I don't think this should be allowed to even come to a vote.
So is there a motion you want to make, or?
I'm making a point of order.
Well, should it be, do you want to table it, or what is it that you want to do?
No, I want it just ruled out of order, so it should be just taken. That should be it. I'll make a motion if you don't want to do that, I'll make a motion to table. I mean, you have to tell me first.
Yeah, no, I don't want to just say it's out of order under those circumstances here.
Okay. All right. I make a motion to table. If it's seconded, it's not debatable. There's a second?
2 seconds.
Okay. Let's call the roll.
Rebecca, is this you? Or is it Rami?
Yeah, I got it. This is a motion to table. If you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. Starting with Ed.
No.
Anthony.
No.
Alita,
No.
Adam,
No.
Gail,
No.
Peter,
No.
Elizabeth,
No.
Elizabeth Ashby,
No.
Marco,
No.
Peggy,
No.
Michelle.
No.
Will is the phone number that's listed next a board member?
I don't know. You can unmute *6, phone number ending with 72.
I am. It's Valerie. I'm voting no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Elaine,
No.
Barry,
No.
It should be enough.
I'll give everyone another few seconds to raise their hand. But the motion to table carried. I will get you the exact numbers shortly. There were 14 no's, but it carried.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Russ. I think that's it for us. Correct, Elizabeth?
That looks right to me.
Okay. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you. All right, next we will go to Abraham and the Street Life Committee.
Abraham did tell me he would have to step away at some point from his computer.
Okay.
So
I will, well, when Abraham returns, he can take over. Why don't we unmute Kaz also, and he can assist me here, but I think I'll go through it because it looks to me they're all unanimous. Is that right?
Yeah, I think they were all unanimous. There was no real contentious issue.
So we have a bunch of unanimous ones. So I see Rita has her hand up. Rita?
She's going to call the question.
Hopefully on all of them. She's nodding her head, but let's just
go ahead and unmute though, Rita.
Call the question on all the affirmatives.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to that?
Lower all the hands. Raise your hand if you're opposed.
It's Ed second.
So this is my vote. If you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause.
Marco has his hand up. Is that an objection? Yeah, go ahead.
That would be an objection. Marco, explain.
Yes, I would like to pull out this group, Jeffries. Jeffries, he signed an agreement with us. 20
Well, let's before we get into what the issue is with that one. So you want to pull out
Jeffries? Yes.
The Jeffries. So let's do all the others. There's no objection to the others. So let's do those first, and then we'll go back to the Jeffrey.
Again, if anyone wants to cast their votes on the unanimous ones, please raise your hand. Seeing none.
So just to clarify for everybody, there's 5 resolutions here. They were unanimous in the committee. What we're doing now is 4 out of the 5, we're just voting on them together as one item. And then the one that we've pulled out is 2B. So this is whether to approve those other 4 other than 2B. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's unanimous, 40 to 0 to 0 to 0.
Okay, so now getting the Jeffrey, let's unmute Marco again so he can let us know what the issue is.
Marco, go ahead.
Thank you. Let me pull out this something. About 4 or 5 years ago, this restaurant came to the community board, and they have a serious problem that did something illegal in the first floor. As a matter of fact, I think he opened the rear yard to do business, and somebody called DOB, and DOB imposed a violation. And that violation we were discussed in our meeting about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the conditions of the approval was they will be responsible within some period of time, some reasonable period of time, that they're going to resolve this problem because this is a fire hazard violation. So now they're coming back for whatever reason. The point is, he breached our agreement and we cannot approve this application. Thank you.
Kaz, did this come up during the meeting, the committee?
No, I don't remember it being brought up then, Marco. Well, actually, Marco wasn't there, but this was not brought up at all.
Of course, I wasn't there, by the way.
Correct, yes. But nobody else brought it up. So, I mean, you know, to bring this up at this stage, I'm not sure what, you know, this goes back, what, 4 or 5 years ago. And if it's a DOB violation, I mean, we're here to approve the liquor license, the SLA licensing. If it's a DOB or DOT or any other agency, I mean, it should go to those agencies rather than to us or to the.
I'll just add also, just give me a minute, Marco. So I mean, it seems to me that, you know, the question here is also whether there's a present violation. And so the fact that we may have, you know, there were some issues. So is there a record of it or?
Yes. The violation number is, let me read it right now. Is 335-0041-32H. And that was the violation was imposed on January 9th of 2013. And let me read what the description of the violation said. Work without a permit, noted, first floor commercial space cellar demo, interior erected part of the ceiling, stop all work, remedy obtained and restore the premises to prior legal conditions, call office prior. That's what it said, the violation. That's what we read at that time.
That's 9 years ago.
No, yes, the violation, but when they came to us, it was 4 or 5 years ago. So the violation was existing when he came for the liquor license, and then we discussed, and they saying they need some time. And you're absolutely right. It's not easy to resolve a violation. It takes some time, but 4 or 5 years and no intentions to resolve, I think is a breach of our agreement.
Yeah, it's just not clear to me that there's a, you know, something was wrong, I guess 9 years ago or maybe 5 years ago, but it's not clear to me that they're still doing something wrong now. And it didn't come up during the meeting and there was no public issues with it, I gather. So let's go next to.
Hold it. If it was the stop work order, how did they complete the renovations or whatever they did 4 or 5 years ago?
Well,
we're 9 years ago. I gather my guess is they resolved it because we're talking about a stop work order that was issued 9 years ago, and obviously since then, you know, they've
well, since this is a liquor license and there's really no time limit, maybe we could, make sure that the SLA knows of the violation and see what they want to do it. And in the meantime, we can contact them and, you know, ask for an explanation. But at this stage, I'm not sure what our responsibility is to DOT or DOB or anybody as far as notifying the SLA.
Yeah, I think they can certainly find it if it's there and you know, consider it potentially, I guess. But let's go to Barry, who is the next person with his hand up.
Yes, good evening. I'm troubled that Marco brought it up this evening rather than going to the community board meeting or the committee meeting earlier this month. Jeffrey has been a very well-established and good community member for the last 9 years or so. Excuse me. They've made good improvements in their space, and I believe that this is what we might call a red herring. We're talking about a liquor license, an application, and I think we should approve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to hold this up tonight, but I think it does rest with us that if there's actually a fire violation, Marco, if that's what you're implying, I think maybe we can amend the resolution giving our approval pending notice of this fire violation, alerting the SLA or pending its remediation. In other words, put something in there. Since we can't check tonight whether or not it's still in existence, Margot seems to think it is, and yet we don't want to hold up the business, but we can approve it with those stipulations so that we know that it'll go further, that somebody else will take a look at it.
Well, I would say rather than do a stipulation or change to the resolution, why don't we look into what the record is? And I think to the extent that we think we need to supplement it, maybe we can do that with a letter if it sort of comes to that. But I think you're right that it shouldn't hold it up this evening.
Yeah, Russell, at the moment, this is an SLA application. They've been in operation for some time. So I don't have the original, but was this an alteration to the LLC, to the ownership? Because they've been in operation for some time. It's an alteration. I'm not sure what the alteration was. So, I mean, they've been operating, and normally an alteration is change of LLC. That's about all that we really would hear.
Okay, so while we're checking on that, I guess let's go to Barbara Royer.
I always do it too fast. I'm not going to be as polite as the others. I find it offensive that we're bringing this up now after we had a meeting. If it was a fire violation, do you really think that this would have been an operating restaurant since 2013 if there was something very dangerous there? I wouldn't. I think what Russell's idea of let's just pass this resolution as it is, and I want to call the resolution, and then if there is something else, we can do it. But I don't see any reason. Not one other person came forward. There was no discussion of it, and to bring it up at a meeting like this and to try to hold it up, I find is out of line. So can I call the question, or I can't call the question now?
No, as you spoke to it. So let's go to Rami next.
I have a point of order on the last vote. It was 41, not 40. And can I call the question?
Yes, you can.
Call the question.
Yeah. And as a secretary, you don't have
Andrea has the tally on one of the previous votes as well.
Okay, so calling the question's been seconded. I'll just say as a secretary, you don't have to make a point of order to correct vote and everything. But okay, so everyone opposed to calling the question, raise your hand, please. Okay, so 2 hands. All right, so we will call the question. So secretaries, go for it.
Yeah, lower all the hands.
And while everyone is raising their hands, I'm announcing that the tabling vote was 27 yes, 14 no's, so the motion carried.
Okay.
All right, and I'm gonna give the final tally for the Zoning and Development Committee. It was 27 yes, 14 no, 0. Okay.
Thank you. Are you taking this one?
Yes, I guess I'm taking this one. I guess, am I? I guess, yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Elaine?
No.
Marco?
No.
Sherry?
No.
Give it a few seconds. Any more? One more round, any more? No. Okay, so it passes 38 yes and 3 no's and 0. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is it for the Street Life Committee. So we will now move to old business, not aware of any. Is there any new business? Kaz.
I mean, after tonight's meeting, we've had a couple of different issues with cross-committee resolutions, whether they should have been done or not. I think we've got to set our priorities right on what committee governs and should it be going to other committees when one committee has no authority over the other's issue. I mean, this could be, discussion in the future.
Yeah, I think so. Well, look, why don't I think, to the extent that there are concerns about particular items that we've heard, let's talk offline, I guess, about
definitely. I don't want to take up tonight.
No, I understand that. But yeah, and we can sort of, talk amongst the various different committee chairs about how to allocate that stuff in a way that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, move to adjourn.
No, you've already spoken, so I'm going to go next to Vanessa.
Hi there, thanks so much. Just wanted to share with everyone, because it has been a long time, but next Tuesday, March 15th, the Technology Committee is having its first meeting in a few years. We'll have a discussion about the Reverse Location and Reverse Keyword Search Prohibition Act, which our very own Assembly Member Dan Court is sponsoring, and he will be there as the speaker. And this bill is about, it would prohibit using geolocation and keyword data, whether or not there's a warrant or not, to be used in the criminal procedure law. So we hope that you will all attend. It's been a long time. And Rebecca, if she's not already unmuted, is it possible to have her just say a word?
Yeah, so those who have followed and participated in some of the Social Justice Committee meetings and our COVID confidentiality task force meetings know that this is a pet project of mine. So I'm very excited that we're going to be raising it for hopefully a resolution at the full board. So I hope you all attend. Vanessa and I are also going to determine whether or not we will be able to add the open meetings law to that agenda if we have enough time. If not, it will be the top priority for an April meeting, and we will let you know whether or not we'll be addressing that next week or the following month, because I know a lot of you probably have comments on that issue, but it's on our agenda list, so we'll get back to you.
Thank you. All right, next let's go to Alita.
Thanks. I have a question for Rebecca based on what she said. Rebecca, do you mean the open meetings law itself and having hybrid meetings will be part of your agenda?
So I'm not sure. I mean, Omicron kind of fell, knock on wood, right? It's the back burner kind of recently. So I want to make sure that if we're going to add that to our agenda, and let's make sure Vanessa is still unmuted for next week, we will let you know ahead of time. I'm not sure we'll be able to have all the speakers we want. And in that case, we will try and get a early April date, because as was mentioned by the reps of our reps tonight, it's not going to be voted on anytime soon, but I know this is a hot ticket item. So we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to weigh in.
I think Alita's question was not about the timing. It was what's the substance of the meeting. I think the answer is yes. It's about a question of hybrid or not, right?
But
or so whether we'll do hybrid or go ahead. Sorry, I don't.
No, I'm sorry, Russell, but it's also about the timing, because if it is something, if the governor lifts the exemption to open meetings law, and we should be able to have some kind of vote on if the board wants a hybrid meetings thing before it just goes into the void of other legislative issues. So I was going to say that if it's not something covered in technology, that I would move to for a resolution supporting hybrid meetings, at least for the foreseeable future. The benefit is that we have a lot more community people attending these meetings, and it's certainly easier for people who are maybe not feeling well or have little kids or something, even though there's a responsibility to get to places, you can't always. And if you're sick, you can join a hybrid meeting when you shouldn't be able to go. And the other thing I just wanted to say is in terms of, and forgive me, cause maybe I was really cognizant of the transportation issue with the sidewalk, the revocable consent, but because it was related to architecture, I felt it appropriate. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Thanks, Russell.
Sure. Yeah. And so on the hybrid meeting question, I mean, I think that's something that's going to require committee level discussion. So, and I think there's sort of two aspects of it. There's the kind of shorter term, while COVID sort of persists question, and then there's a sort of longer term, do we need changes to the open meetings law? But all of that is stuff that I think is those are big issues, and I know there's going to be a lot of different views on it. So I think we're just going to have to do that in a committee.
Okay. I just, I like to be proactive about things, as I'm sure you already know. Thank you.
I agree. Well, I like to be proactive about things too, but I like to do it in committees.
I mean, I will also just say we tried to have this a meeting on this maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. So we'll definitely try to. I want to make sure we have enough time to get everyone's perspective. And this will, even though the emergency will kind of expire, I don't think that the actual legislation, because again, it's a state law that has to be amended without the emergency order. So I want to make sure we give it the right amount of time that it deserves.
Okay.
All right. Next, let's go to Peggy Price.
Hi, thanks very much. So as you know, a number of committees, including the Women and Families Committees, have set up meetings for after March 15th. And in all the cases, I've noticed they're planned to be Zoom meetings. I'm just talking about meetings in March. And I think it poses a bit of a problem, but particularly I'd say for the Women's Committee, for all of us to suddenly have to find locations for us. I know some of our speakers would not be able to participate if we could not hold Zoom meetings this month. In our case, we can't move the meeting to another month because it's about equal pay. And this is the International Women's Month, and March 15th is is Equal Pay Day. So we can't move it out of March. one of our speakers definitely would not be able to participate.
Yeah.
That's State Senator Ramos, and we
So-
need her to participate. So the bottom line is there some way that we can assure that those of us who have meetings in March on Zoom will be able to continue the meetings on Zoom at least till the 31st of March?
Yes, the answer is yes. So I was gonna say more about this in an email to everybody, but I'll just tell you, committee meetings will stay on Zoom for the, until we hear otherwise, regardless of the, extension or not of the suspension. So I think similar to what we had done last year when we were faced with the suspension expiring, we're going to keep the committee meetings on Zoom, and we'll sort of figure out what we're going to do about the full board meeting. But that's certainly going to be true through the end of March, probably further than that. And again, I'll provide additional details, but your concerns are well taken, but don't worry, that meeting, your meeting will stay on Zoom, and other meetings can as well.
Thank you.
Sure. Rami,
I'd like to move to adjourn.
is there a second?
Chuck.
Chuck seconds. Is anyone opposed to adjourning? Okay, all right. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Did we give a vote count for the last item that we voted on?
38-3 to 0-0.
Excellent. Thank you.